At my granddaughter's graduation dinner, I stood there until I realized why. My daughter had labeled the seats with the phrase, "For immediate family only." Before leaving, I left a receipt on the table. Subscribe to the channel for more stories like this, and comment the city you're watching from. The invitation arrived in my mailbox on a Tuesday. Thick cream-colored paper with gold embossing. Clearly expensive. My hands trembled slightly as I opened it, excitement building in my chest. Violet's college graduation ceremony and dinner. My only granddaughter, graduating with honors from Columbia University. I immediately called my friend Martha to share the news. "She's invited me, Martha." After all these years, Claire finally included me in something important. "That's wonderful, Brenda," Martha replied, but I detected hesitation in her voice. "Just don't get your hopes up too high. Remember what happened at the high school graduation." I brushed off her concern. "That was 4 years ago. Things are different now." I spent the next 2 weeks preparing. I withdrew a significant portion of my savings, money I'd been setting aside for years, and wrote Violet a check as her graduation gift. I also prepared a letter explaining that I had been secretly funding her education all these years, despite Claire telling her that it was all coming from her and her husband's family. I bought a new dress, had my hair styled professionally, even splurged on a pair of comfortable yet elegant shoes. The evening of the dinner, I arrived at the upscale Manhattan restaurant 15 minutes early, clutching my handbag with the check and letter inside. The hostess guided me to a private room at the back where round tables were elegantly arranged, each with formal place settings and elaborate centerpieces. "Brenda, you made it," Violet exclaimed, rushing over to hug me. At 22, she was the spitting image of Claire at that age, though her smile seemed warmer, more genuine. "I wouldn't miss it for the world, sweetheart," I said, holding her tight. "I'm so proud of you." Claire appeared behind her daughter, looking polished and perfect as always in her designer dress. "Mother," she said with a tight smile, "I see you got the invitation." "Of course," I replied, trying to match her composure. "Thank you for including me." Claire nodded stiffly before turning to greet other guests. I stood awkwardly, watching as people filled the room. Claire's husband's family primarily. Wealthy, well-connected people who barely acknowledged my presence. As dinner was about to be served, I noticed everyone gravitating toward their assigned seats. Small elegant place cards marked each setting. I circled the main table, searching for my name. "Excuse me," I asked a server. "Could you help me find my seat?" He glanced at the seating chart. "Name: Brenda Collins." He frowned slightly. "I don't see you at the main tables, ma'am." My heart sank. Perhaps there's been a mistake? "I'm Violet's grandmother." The server looked uncomfortable. "Let me check with the host." As he walked away, I continued searching on my own. That's when I spotted it. A small table near the entrance, partially hidden behind a large floral arrangement. A single place setting with my name card. I walked over, my legs feeling heavier with each step. But what stopped me cold wasn't the isolation of the table. It was what was written on a small tent card beside my place setting. "For immediate family only." The message couldn't have been clearer. In Claire's eyes, I wasn't immediate family. I wasn't family at all. I stood there, my fingertips resting on the white tablecloth, as conversations and laughter swirled around me. No one noticed the elderly woman frozen in place, trying to process the deliberate humiliation. Claire caught my eye from across the room. For a moment I thought I saw a flicker of shame cross her face, but it vanished quickly, replaced by her usual mask of indifference. With trembling hands, I reached into my purse and pulled out the envelope containing both the check and the letter detailing years of secret financial support. I walked to the main table, placed it beside Claire's purse, and turned to leave. "Grandma," Violet called out. "Aren't you staying for dinner?" I forced a smile. "I'm sorry, dear. I'm not feeling well." "Congratulations again." As I walked out of the restaurant into the cool evening air, tears blurred my vision. Decades of rejection crystallized in that one small place card. For immediate family only. After everything I had sacrificed, everything I had given, I was still an outsider looking in. The taxi driver didn't comment on my tears as I gave him my address. He simply handed me a tissue and drove in silence. I was grateful for that small kindness from a stranger when my own daughter had shown me none. That night, as I sat alone in my apartment, I wondered what Claire would do when she opened that envelope. Would she finally understand what she had thrown away? Or would she simply cash the check and continue pretending I didn't exist? The morning after Violet's graduation dinner, I woke to the persistent ringing of my telephone. I let it go to the answering machine. Claire's voice filled my small living room, sharp and controlled. "Mother, we need to discuss what you did last night. Call me back." I didn't. Instead, I made myself a cup of tea and sat by the window overlooking the park across the street. Children played while their parents watched from nearby benches. Families together like we once were. My mind drifted back to when Claire was born. Frank and I had been married just 2 years. He worked at the auto plant and I had a part-time job at the library. We weren't rich, but we were happy. We had plans. Then Frank's heart gave out one ordinary Tuesday morning. Just like that, at 32, I was a widow with a 3-year-old daughter. I had no choice but to take on 2 jobs. During the day, I worked as a secretary at an insurance company. Evenings and weekends, I picked up shifts waiting tables at a local diner. Mrs. Abernathy from next door watched Claire when I couldn't be home, which was often. "Mommy, why can't you come to my tea party?" Claire would ask, her small face pinched with disappointment. "Mommy has to work, sweetheart," I'd tell her, smoothing her hair. "So we can have a nice place to live and food to eat." I missed her first school play because a snowstorm delayed my bus. I was an hour late to her 8th birthday party because my boss needed urgent documents typed before the weekend. Each time, Claire's eyes grew a little colder, her smile a little more forced. I saved every penny I could for her education. I wanted Claire to have opportunities one never had, to go to college, to choose a career she loved rather than one that merely paid the bills. I wanted her life to be easier than mine. Claire was brilliant. She earned a scholarship to a prestigious university, but it only covered tuition. I took out a second mortgage on our small house to pay for her housing, books, and living expenses. I never told her. I wanted her to focus on her studies, not worry about money. During her sophomore year, Claire met Richard Townsend. Handsome, charming, from a wealthy East Coast family. When she brought him home during spring break, I saw how she flinched when he noticed our shabby furniture, the worn carpet, the outdated kitchen. "Your mother lives quaintly," I overheard him say to Claire as they left. She didn't defend me. After graduation, they married in a lavish ceremony that Richard's parents paid for. I wore my best dress, the one I'd saved for special occasions for over a decade. Claire's new mother-in-law took one look at me and whispered something to her husband. They both smiled politely but kept their distance. Claire changed after the wedding. She adopted the Townsends' way of speaking, their interests, their social circle. She moved into their world of country clubs and charity galas, of summer homes and European vacations. Each time we spoke, I felt the distance between us growing wider. When Violet was born, I thought things might change. I visited the hospital with a small stuffed bear I'd knitted myself. Claire was surrounded by Richard's family, the room overflowing with expensive bouquets and gifts. "Oh, Mother," Claire said, eyeing the handmade bear. "You shouldn't have gone to the trouble." Richard's mother already bought her a complete nursery set from Paris. I was allowed to hold Violet for exactly 5 minutes before a nurse suggested I leave so Claire could rest. As the years passed, my visits became less frequent, always scheduled at Claire's convenience, always supervised as if I might somehow contaminate Violet with my middle-class sensibilities. Still, I loved my granddaughter fiercely. When Claire mentioned that the Townsends were contributing to a college fund for Violet, I quietly opened an account of my own. Every month I deposited what I could. Sometimes just $50, sometimes more when I managed to pick up extra work despite my advancing age. I never told Claire. She had made it clear that she didn't want my help, didn't want to acknowledge where she came from. But I wanted to contribute to Violet's future, even if no one ever knew. The phone rang again, interrupting my thoughts. This time it was Martha. "Have you talked to Claire?" she asked without preamble. "No," I replied. "And I don't plan to." "Brenda," Martha sighed. "What exactly did you write in that letter?" "The truth. That I've been contributing to Violet's education fund since she was born. That despite Claire pretending I don't exist, I've never stopped being her mother or Violet's grandmother. Silence stretched between us. Finally, Martha spoke. Maybe it's time Claire knew exactly what you sacrificed for her. Not just the money, but everything. It wouldn't change anything, I said, though a small part of me wondered if that was true. After we hung up, I pulled out the old photo album from my bedroom closet. Claire on her first bicycle. Claire winning the spelling bee in 4th grade. Claire in her prom dress secondhand but carefully altered to look new. Claire in her graduation cap and gown, her smile bright with promise. I traced her face in the last photo, taken before Richard, before the Townsends, before she decided I wasn't good enough to be part of her real family. The doorbell rang, startling me. I wasn't expecting anyone. I tucked the album away and went to answer, my joints protesting after sitting too long with my memories. When I opened the door, my heart nearly stopped. "Grandma," Violet said, her eyes red-rimmed but determined. "We need to talk." I stepped aside to let Violet enter my apartment, trying to hide my surprise. In all her 22 years, this was the first time she had come to see me alone, without Claire hovering nearby, monitoring our interaction. "Would you like some tea?" I asked, falling back on politeness to mask my nervousness. "Sure," she replied, glancing around my modest living room. Her eyes lingered on the collection of framed photos on my bookshelf, most of them school pictures of her that I'd requested each year, though Claire often forgot to send them. I busied myself in the small kitchen, giving us both a moment to collect our thoughts. When I returned with 2 steaming mugs, Violet was holding a photograph of Claire at her high school graduation. "Mom never showed me these old pictures," she said quietly. I set the mugs down on the coffee table. "Your mother prefers to focus on the present." Violet placed the frame back carefully. "Is that why she never told me you paid for my education?" Her directness caught me off guard. I'd expected Claire to hide the letter, to continue the fiction she'd created about my role in their lives. "I found the letter in Mom's purse," Violet continued, answering my unspoken question. "She didn't know I saw it. I was looking for her car keys this morning." I wrapped my hands around the warm mug. I shouldn't have left it like that. It was impulsive. Was it true? Violet leaned forward, her eyes, so like Claire's, fixed intently on mine. "Have you really been paying for my schooling all these years?" I nodded slowly. "Not all of it. Your father's family contributed significantly, I'm sure. But yes, I've been adding to your education fund since you were born." "Why?" The question was simple but loaded with decades of complicated history. "Because you're my granddaughter," I said. "Because I wanted to help, even if your mother didn't want me involved in your life." Violet's brow furrowed. "Mom always said you were distant, that you chose work over family, that you were never interested in being involved." A familiar pain squeezed my heart. "Is that what she told you?" "She said you were too busy for her growing up, so she didn't want to burden you with grandparent duties." Violet's voice was uncertain now. "She said you preferred your independence." I couldn't hold back a bitter laugh. "Independence wasn't a choice I made, Violet. It was a necessity." For the next hour I told her the truth. About her grandfather's sudden death. About working 2 jobs to keep a roof over Claire's head. About the sacrifices that Claire had reinterpreted as abandonment. I showed her the scrapbook I'd kept of Claire's childhood, report cards, drawings, certificates of achievement, treasures I'd collected despite my exhaustion. "I missed things," I admitted. "Important things. School plays, parent-teacher conferences, sometimes even birthdays when my shifts couldn't be changed. But I was never distant by choice." Violet listened silently, her tea growing cold in her hands. Finally she asked, "Why didn't you ever tell Mom about the money? About helping with my education? Your mother made it clear after she married your father that she didn't want my help. She was ashamed of where she came from. Of me." The words hurt to say aloud, but they were true. I thought if she knew I was contributing, she would refuse the money out of pride. And I wanted to help you, even if it had to be a secret. "But all these years." Violet's voice trailed off, her expression troubled. "All these years I've been waiting for your mother to see me, really see me," I said softly. "Not as an embarrassment or an obligation, but as her mother. As your grandmother." Violet reached into her bag and pulled out a thick envelope. "I found this too. In Mom's desk at home." I recognized it immediately. The card I'd sent for Violet's 16th birthday, containing a check and a letter explaining that I'd be helping with her college expenses. A card that Violet apparently never received. There are others, Violet said quietly. Birthday cards, Christmas cards, congratulations cards for my achievements. Dozens of them, all unopened. My hands trembled as I took the envelope. She kept them in a locked drawer. Along with these, Violet pulled out several small, worn notebooks. I recognized them instantly. The journals I'd kept during Claire's childhood, documenting milestones, funny stories, my hopes and dreams for her future. Journals I thought I'd lost during our move to a smaller apartment after Claire left for college. She took these. My voice cracked with disbelief. Violet nodded, her eyes filling with tears. I started reading them last night. They're beautiful, Grandma. Full of so much love for Mom. I stared at the journals, overwhelmed. All these years I thought Claire had simply discarded my memories, my experiences as her mother. Instead, she had kept them hidden away. Too painful to read, perhaps, but too precious to destroy. Does your mother know you're here? I asked finally. Violet shook her head. She thinks I'm with friends celebrating graduation. She hesitated, then added, I needed to know the truth before I confronted her. And now that you know? Violet's expression hardened with determination. Now I think it's time for Mom to stop hiding from the past. From you. She took my hand, her grip firm and resolute. I want to know my grandmother. The real you. Not the version Mom created. For the first time in decades, hope flickered in my chest. Fragile but undeniable. There's something else, Violet said, her voice dropping to a near whisper. Something Mom doesn't know yet. I waited, watching as my granddaughter gathered her courage. I've been accepted to graduate school, she said. And I want you there when I tell her. I want you beside me when I explain that I'm making my own choices from now on. The Townsend's house in Greenwich, Connecticut was exactly as I remembered it. Imposing, immaculate, and cold. The kind of house featured in architectural magazines, but lacking the warmth that makes a place a home. As Violet drove through the wrought iron gates, I felt my anxiety rising. Are you sure about this? I asked, smoothing my skirt nervously. Violet's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Absolutely sure. It's long overdue. She had insisted we come unannounced. If we call first, Mom will find a reason to postpone, she'd explained. She's excellent at avoiding difficult conversations. Now, as we pulled into the circular driveway, I saw Claire through the large bay window, arranging flowers in the foyer. She looked up at the sound of the car, her expression shifting from curiosity to shock when she recognized me in the passenger seat. Ready? Violet asked, turning off the engine. I nodded, though my heart hammered against my ribs. Ready. Claire was waiting at the door, her posture rigid. Violet, what is the meaning of this? Her eyes flickered to me, then back to her daughter. You didn't mention you were bringing guests. I didn't mention I was coming at all, Violet replied calmly. May we come in? We need to talk. Claire hesitated, then stepped aside reluctantly. Your father isn't home. Good, Violet said. This conversation should be just between us. We followed Claire into the living room, a space designed to impress rather than comfort, with its pristine white furniture and carefully curated art pieces. Nothing was out of place, nothing revealed any genuine personality or history. Would you like something to drink, Mother? Claire asked, her tone making it clear she was only offering out of obligation. No, thank you, I replied, sitting on the edge of a sofa that probably cost more than my entire apartment. Claire remained standing, arms crossed defensively. What's this about? If it's regarding the letter you left at the dinner. I saw the letter, Violet interrupted. And the cards. And the journals. Claire paled visibly. You went through my private things? I found them by accident, Violet said. But I'm glad I did. Why did you hide Grandma's cards from me? Why did you tell me she wasn't interested in being part of my life? Claire's composure slipped for an instant before she regained control. I was protecting you. From what? Violet demanded. From knowing my grandmother loves me? From understanding our family's real history? From disappointment, Claire snapped. From waiting by the window for someone who's always too busy to show up. The accusation hit me like a physical blow. Claire, I began, my voice soft. Is that what you think? That I was too busy for you? I don't think it, Mother. I lived it. Claire's voice was brittle with decades-old pain. Every missed recital, every school event where other parents showed up but mine was working. Every birthday where you were too exhausted to even stay awake through cake. I was working to keep us afloat. I protested. After your father died. I know why you worked, Claire cut in. But knowing why didn't make it hurt any less. Do you have any idea what it's like to be a child whose mother is never there? A child whose mother sacrificed everything to give her a better life? I corrected gently. I miss things, yes. But I was always there in the ways that mattered. Were you? Claire's eyes shimmered with unshed tears. Then why don't I remember feeling loved? Why do I only remember feeling like an obligation, a burden? The raw honesty of her words stunned me into silence. Had I been so focused on providing financially that I'd failed to give her the emotional security she needed? Mom, Violet interjected softly. I read Grandma's journals. Every page shows how much she loved you. How proud she was of you. How hard she tried. Claire turned away, her shoulders stiff. It wasn't enough. Maybe not, I acknowledged, finding my voice again. Maybe I got it wrong. But Claire, everything I did was because I loved you. Because I wanted you to have opportunities one never. And then when I finally had those opportunities, when I finally made something of myself, you resented me for it, Claire accused. No, I shook my head emphatically. I never resented your success. I resented being erased from your life. Being treated like an embarrassment. Being excluded from my granddaughter's life. Claire flinched but didn't deny it. Instead, she asked, why did you pay for Violet's education in secret? Why not just tell me? Would you have accepted my help? I countered softly. Her silence was answer enough. You didn't want me to be part of Violet's life, I continued. But I am her grandmother. I wanted to contribute in the only way you would allow, anonymously. I never said you couldn't be part of her life, Claire protested weakly. Separate tables at graduation. Immediate family only? I reminded her. You've made it abundantly clear where I stand. Violet stood up suddenly. Stop it, both of you. This isn't getting us anywhere. She moved to stand between us, looking from her mother to me and back again. Mom, Grandma made mistakes. But so did you. You lied to me my entire life about who she is. Claire sank onto the sofa, looking suddenly exhausted. I thought I was protecting you. From what? Violet pressed. From loving your mother the way you couldn't? The question hung in the air, heavy with implication. Claire's face crumpled, decades of carefully constructed defenses finally giving way. I was afraid, she whispered so quietly I almost didn't hear. Afraid she'd disappoint you the way I felt she disappointed me. Afraid you'd love her more than me. The admission struck me to my core. All these years of rejection weren't about shame or embarrassment. They were about fear. Fear that the bond between grandmother and granddaughter might somehow diminish Claire's importance. Oh, Claire! I breathed, my heart breaking for the insecure child still living inside my accomplished, poised daughter. That's not how love works. It's not a finite resource. How would I know? Claire's voice cracked. I spent my childhood competing for scraps of your attention. The truth of her perspective, so different from mine, yet equally valid, left me speechless. We had been living in parallel universes, each with our own version of the same shared history. Violet knelt before her mother, taking her hands. Mom, I have something to tell you. Something important. Claire looked up, visibly trying to collect herself. What is it? I've been accepted to graduate school, Violet said. At Stanford. And I want Grandma at my side through all of it. The move, the graduation, everything. Claire's eyes widened. Stanford? But I thought. Your father and I assumed you'd work at his firm after graduation. That was your plan, not mine, Violet said firmly. And I'm done living according to other people's expectations. The week after our confrontation at Claire's house passed in a blur of emotions. Violet called daily, updating me on the aftermath. Claire had retreated into a brittle silence, while Richard was openly furious about Violet's decision to attend Stanford instead of joining his law firm as planned. He keeps talking about family legacy and throwing away opportunities, Violet told me over the phone. As if my only value is in continuing what he built. I recognize the pattern all too well. Your mother faced similar pressure from the Townsends when she married your father, I said. They had very specific expectations for her role in their family. Did she ever tell you she wanted something different? Violet asked. I hesitated, memories surfacing of the bright, ambitious girl Claire had once been. She wanted to be a marine biologist, I said finally. She loved the ocean, spent hours reading about sea creatures. But that dream disappeared after she met your father. On Saturday morning, Violet appeared at my door with 2 large cardboard boxes. Mom sent these, she said, setting them down in my hallway. She said they belonged to you. I opened the first box cautiously. Inside were dozens of envelopes, birthday cards, Christmas cards, congratulation notes. All addressed to Violet in my handwriting, all unopened. Beneath them lay photographs I'd sent over the years, school mementos I'd asked for copies of, even small gifts that had apparently never reached my granddaughter. There's more, Violet said quietly, gesturing to the second box. This one contained my old journals, but also items I hadn't seen in decades. Frank's pocket watch, the small jewelry box my mother had left me, photo albums from before Claire was born. Treasured possessions I thought had been lost during moves or simply discarded. She kept everything, I whispered, lifting out a faded birthday card I'd given Claire for her 10th birthday. My message inside was simple but heartfelt. To my darling daughter, you are the light of my life. Everything I do for you. Love always, Mom. Violet sat beside me on the couch. I asked her why she sent these now. She said it was time to stop hiding from the truth. Later that afternoon, as we sorted through the boxes, cataloging years of hidden connections, my doorbell rang again. I opened it to find Claire standing there, looking uncharacteristically uncertain. May I come in? She asked. I stepped aside wordlessly, watching as she entered the apartment, her eyes immediately finding Violet among the scattered contents of the boxes. I see you've been going through everything, Claire said, her voice carefully neutral. Why did you keep all this? I asked. If you wanted to shut me out of your lives, why not just throw it away? Claire sank into an armchair, suddenly looking exhausted. I don't know, she admitted. Maybe I couldn't bear to erase you completely. Maybe I needed reminders of why I was so angry. Mom, Violet said gently, I found something in one of the boxes I think you should see. She handed Claire a small leather-bound book I didn't recognize. Claire's expression changed as she took it, a flash of recognition followed by wariness. What is this? I asked. My diary, Claire said softly. From high school. She looked up at Violet. Where did you find it? In the box with Grandma's journals. I think it got mixed in by accident. Violet hesitated. I read some of it. I hope that's okay. Claire opened the diary, turning pages slowly. I haven't looked at this in years. Read the entry from March 18th, Violet suggested quietly. Claire found the page and began reading aloud. Mom got me the microscope today. I can't believe it. I've wanted one for so long, but they're so expensive. She must have been saving for months. When I asked her how she could afford it, she just smiled and said, some things are worth sacrificing for. She looks so tired but so happy to see me happy. Sometimes I forget how hard she works just for me. Claire's voice faltered. She flipped forward several pages and continued. Caught Mom sleeping at the kitchen table again. 3rd time this week. There were college brochures spread out in front of her. She's been researching scholarships for me even though I'm only a sophomore. Her hands are so rough now from all the cleaning she does at the hotel on weekends. I wish she didn't have to work so much, but she says my education is everything. That it's my ticket to a better life. Tears slid down Claire's cheeks as she closed the diary. I'd forgotten I wrote these. There are dozens of entries like that, Violet said. About how much Grandma sacrificed for you. About how grateful you were. What happened? I asked softly. When did that grateful girl become so ashamed of me? Claire wiped her tears with a trembling hand. The Townsends happened, she said bitterly. Or rather, I let them happen to me. She stood up and walked to the window, staring out at the street below. When I met Richard, I was suddenly thrust into a world I didn't understand. Everything about me was wrong: my clothes, my accent, my mannerisms. His mother took me aside at our first dinner together and suggested that if the relationship was going somewhere, I might want to refine myself. And Richard? I prompted. He said he loved me for who I was, Claire said with a hollow laugh. But he was quick to correct me whenever I embarrassed him. It was always subtle: a raised eyebrow, a gentle suggestion. I started to see myself through their eyes, and I hated what I saw. So you reinvented yourself, Violet said. Claire nodded. I became the person they wanted me to be. And part of that meant distancing myself from my past. She turned to face me. From you. You were ashamed of me, I said, the old pain resurfacing. No, Claire replied, surprising me. I was ashamed of myself, of where I came from, of the struggling girl who didn't know which fork to use at dinner. Her voice broke. It was easier to blame you than to admit I'd betrayed myself. The room fell silent as the weight of her confession settled around us. Outside, rain began to fall, soft droplets tapping against the windows like gentle reminders of all the tears we'd shed over the years. Finally, Violet spoke. I found something else, she said, reaching into her bag. Something I think you both need to see. She pulled out a yellowed envelope, sealed but crumpled with age. It was tucked inside one of the journals. It's addressed to you, Mom. Claire took the envelope, frowning slightly as she recognized my handwriting. When did you write this? The day you told me you were engaged to Richard, I replied, suddenly remembering. I wrote you a letter I never had the courage to give you. With trembling fingers, Claire broke the seal and unfolded the paper inside. As she began to read, her face crumpled, decades of misunderstanding finally giving way to truth. 2 months after our confrontation, I stood in the doorway of Violet's new apartment in Palo Alto, watching as Claire arranged books on a shelf while Violet unpacked kitchen supplies. The scene was so ordinary, yet to me it felt miraculous. My daughter and granddaughter, moving together in an easy rhythm I'd thought I'd never witness. Mom, can you hand me that box of picture frames? Violet called from the living room. It took me a moment to realize she was speaking to me, not Claire. The word Mom still felt new on her lips when directed at me, but increasingly natural. Since finding the journals and letters, Violet had taken to calling us both Mom, Claire when speaking to her mother, and me when addressing her grandmother. It was her way of acknowledging that she had 2 mothers in her life, both equally important. I carried the box over, my heart full. Where do you want these? On the mantle, I think, Violet replied with a smile. I want to see both of my families every day. The frames contained a carefully curated collection of photographs. Violet as a baby in Claire's arms, Violet and her father at sailing competitions, Claire and Richard at charity events, and most precious to me, several newly framed photos of Violet and me from the past 2 months, images that captured our rapidly deepening relationship. Claire came to stand beside me, her expression thoughtful as she surveyed the arrangement. It looks good, she said softly. All of us together. The path to this moment hadn't been easy. After reading my decades-old letter, in which I'd expressed my fears that she was losing herself in her relationship with Richard, but also my unconditional love regardless of her choices, Claire had broken down completely. Years of carefully constructed defenses crumbled, revealing the wounded child who had never stopped needing her mother, despite her best efforts to prove otherwise. We'd talked through the night, Claire finally giving voice to resentments and hurts she'd harbored for decades, me explaining contexts and motivations she'd been too young to understand. It wasn't a magical reconciliation, too much time had passed, too many wounds had festered, but it was a beginning. Richard had been less receptive to the changes in his wife and daughter. When Claire announced she would be helping Violet move to Stanford rather than attending the Townsend's annual summer gala, he'd been furious. You're choosing her over our family? He demanded, according to Claire. I'm choosing to be both a wife and a mother, Claire had replied. I'm choosing to stop pretending my life began when I met you. It was the first time in their marriage that Claire had directly challenged the unspoken hierarchy of loyalties Richard had established. She'd called me the next day, her voice shaky but determined. He'll either adjust or he won't, she'd said. But I'm done erasing parts of myself to make him comfortable. Now, as the 3 of us worked together to settle Violet into her new home, that conversation felt like a turning point. Not just for Claire and Richard, but for all of us. Lunch break, Violet suggested, wiping her hands on her jeans. I'm starving. We settled around the small kitchen table with sandwiches I'd prepared that morning. The domesticity of the moment wasn't lost on any of us. I was thinking, Violet said between bites, about Thanksgiving. It's still months away, but I was hoping we could spend it together. All of us. Claire and I exchanged glances. The holidays had always been a particularly painful time for me, days when the absence of family was most acute. Your father's family has traditions, Claire began cautiously. I know, Violet nodded. But traditions can change. Evolve. She reached across the table to take my hand. I want my whole family together. I'd like that, I said softly. Claire was quiet for a moment, then nodded. I'll talk to Richard. But regardless of what he decides, Violet's right. It's time for new traditions. After lunch, as Claire took a business call outside, Violet pulled me into what would be her bedroom. A small wrapped package sat on the bare mattress. What's this? I asked. Open it, she urged. Inside was a silver picture frame. The photograph it contained made my breath catch. A black and white image of me holding newborn Clare. My face alight with love and wonder despite the exhaustion evident in my eyes. Where did you find this? I whispered. In one of Mom's albums, Violet explained. She has a whole section of photos of just you and her that she kept separate from the family albums Richard's mother arranged. I traced Claire's tiny face in the photograph. She was so beautiful. She still is, Violet said gently. And so are you. That evening, as we finished arranging Violet's apartment, Claire approached me with an envelope. I have something for you, she said, a hint of nervousness in her voice. Inside was a printed invitation to Violet's graduate school orientation ceremony. But what made tears spring to my eyes was the handwritten note at the bottom. Reserved seating for Brenda Collins, grandmother of the graduate. Immediate family section. Claire, I breathed, unable to say more. I got it wrong, Mom, she said quietly. For so many years. But I'd like to get it right from now on. 3 weeks later, I sat in the auditorium at Stanford University, watching proudly as Violet was welcomed into her graduate program. Claire sat beside me, her hand occasionally finding mine during particularly emotional moments. Richard had chosen not to attend, sending his regrets along with an expensive gift. His absence was noted but not dwelled upon. After the ceremony, as we gathered for photos, the photographer gestured for family members to join Violet. Without hesitation, Claire linked her arm through mine and led me forward. Family only for this one, the photographer called out. Claire's grip on my arm tightened. She is family, she said firmly. The most immediate kind. As the camera flashed, capturing the three of us together, 3 generations of women with the same determined chin and resilient spirit, I felt a sense of completion I'd thought would never come. Later that night, back at Violet's apartment, we sat on her small balcony, sharing a bottle of wine under the stars. The conversation flowed easily, decades of silence giving way to shared memories, laughter, and plans for the future. I've been thinking, Claire said during a lull in the conversation, about moving out here at least part-time. Violet and I both stared at her in surprise. What about Dad? The house in Greenwich? Violet asked. Claire shrugged, a hint of the rebellious girl she'd once been showing through. We have houses everywhere. Why not California too? She sipped her wine thoughtfully. Besides, I've spent 30 years living according to other people's expectations. Maybe it's time I figured out what I actually want. And what do you want, Claire? I asked softly. She looked at me, then at Violet, her eyes clear and certain for perhaps the first time since she'd stepped into the Townsends' world. This, she said simply. Family. Truth. No more empty chairs, no more pretending, no more shame. As the night deepened around us, stars blinking into existence overhead, I silently marveled at the journey that had brought us here. From rejection to reconciliation, from silence to understanding, from empty chairs to a table finally made whole. To new beginnings, Violet proposed, raising her glass. And to old foundations, Claire added, meeting my eyes with a smile that held both apology and promise. I lifted my glass, my heart full beyond measure. To family, I said. The real kind.